Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope this video finds you in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. So, continuing with my discussion of the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year, 2020, and in particular with respect to the release of the Criterion Collection called Three Fantastic Journeys by Karel Zaman. Please, if you'll permit me, let me share with you some thoughts that I have with respect to spy number 1017. This is the film from 1962 from the filmmaker Karel Zaman. The film is Baron Praschil, or in English, The Fabulous Baron Munchausen. Baron Praschil, or The Fabulous Baron Munchausen, is the third of three feature films, again in this set from the Criterion Collection, which is the Blu-ray set with the limited pop-up art. So therefore you can see how it opens up like so. And the third film, The Fabulous Baron Munchausen, opens up like this. A very interesting pop-up art, if I do say so myself, with the sleeve here, which is supposed to house the disc. At the moment, I have the disc elsewhere. I don't use these sleeves, and so that's why it is empty for purposes of this. But that's where the disc goes, and this is the pop-up art with respect to the Fabulous Baron Munchausen, or Baron Praschil. This is such a wildly inventive, utterly imaginative, and totally, and I mean this in a very positive way, outrageously splendid work of cinematic art. It uses so many visual tricks and styles that could be said on the one hand to be special effects tricks, but also are very much optical tricks and optical techniques, techniques that are designed in camera, techniques involving forced perspective and the use of miniatures and the use of the space around actors, colors, and of course animation and other special effects designed tricks like that in terms of the cinematic craft to tell the story that really spans both time and space in terms of part of the story dealing with outer space and the moon, and also the idea of flying through the stars and going to various points and going on these adventures with this character, Baron Praschil, based of course on the character of Baron Munchausen. So this is the absolutely one-of-a-kind, utterly inventive work of the moving image of cinema. This is the Fabulous Baron Munchausen. And my goodness, my friends, if you weren't convinced yet of the genius of the great filmmaker Karel Zaman as you went through this set, beginning with the brilliant journey to the beginning of time and then continuing on to the utterly sublime Invention for Destruction, then by the time you reach the Fabulous Baron Munchausen, there is just so much overwhelming evidence presented in this film alone as to the undeniable, staggering level of genius and artistic craftsmanship that Karel Zaman holds. It is something to behold, and it is something to marvel at in terms of how these set pieces that we see on screen and how the camera moves through this invented space, how these shots were invented and imagined and planned and implemented. This is the stuff of real cinema legend. And there's a great rip-roaring adventure that involves a lot of inventive tricks and machinery and flying, and also meeting many different characters and a lot of comic bits. There's a lot of comedy in many of his films, but in particular this film, Fabulous Baron Munchausen. And so, my friends, this film is nothing short of an utter delight for the senses. This is Carl Zamann's film, considered by many to be his great masterpiece. This is the utterly brilliant, fabulous Baron Munchausen, or Baron Praschil, from the Criterion Collection. And my friends, the Criterion Collection has done yet another superb job. This is the 4K digital restoration, and this has a number of great supplements. Well, before I get to that, let me again share with you the essay that's included with the set. This is by Michael Atkinson, Storm of Craft. And this has one continuous essay that talks about Zamann's career as a whole, but included in the discussion, of course, is the film Baron Praschil, or the Fabulous Baron Munchausen. So this is a very highly recommended read if you have the opportunity to do so. And then when we talk about the supplements that are included on this disc, because as if we remember, this is a set that has, the Blu-ray set has 3 discs. Each has the one film on it, the feature film, plus some supplements to follow. So with respect to the disc that includes the Fabulous Baron Munchausen, there are a number of supplements included. So the first one, which is kind of the big one, is the long feature-length documentary made in 2015, which is given the title Film Adventurer, Karel Zaman. And this was a documentary that really presents a lot of great foundational information about the life and career of Zaman, beginning with his early background and how he developed into a filmmaker and animator through his short films, and then gradually through to his main body of work in terms of his feature films, and then leading off into his final years as a filmmaker. So it really gives an overarching perspective as to the life and times of Karel Zaman, and also the kinds of challenges that he had to confront during his life in terms of his career, and also the backdrop of the sweeping changes of history that were occurring while he was making films, and how these either played a direct role or played little direct role in the kind of artistic craftsmanship works that he was producing during these times. It is a must-see documentary if you are interested in the works of Zaman. This isn't a Criterion produced documentary. This is taken from elsewhere, and I will get to that in a second, but it is still, I think, must-see viewing, and it's great that the Criterion Collection has included it here. This is Film Adventurer, the documentary, the feature-length documentary about Karel Zaman, his life and his career. Then what is also included in terms of the supplements with the Criterion release are what we now know to be the museum short documentaries, the Karel Zaman Museum documentaries, and these are very short documentaries. Of course, the longer documentary, the Film Adventure, is also via the Karel Zaman Museum, but now we also have the shorter 3-minute or so documentaries included in the Criterion disc. So which ones are they? Well, they are, number one, why Zaman made the film, and this has comments from Zaman, also from archival footage of Zaman, plus Ludmila Zemanova, and also from the actor Miloš Kopecki, who plays Baron Prasil. And so we see him speak, as well as Ludmila Zemanova as well. And then the second documentary is called The Cast, and this features Ludmila Zemanova and actor Miloš Kopecki. And it's something to do with the cast and who were appearing in the film, but it's more to do with how Zaman used actors, how he employed actors, how he worked with actors, informing the types of films that he was making, and what were the actors' views and opinions and perspectives with respect to working with Zaman, at least as far as the comments from the actor Miloš Kopecki are concerned. So again, another insightful and very valuable short documentary. Then the third museum documentary is called Special Effects Techniques, and this is divided into 4 little subsections: his best special effects 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are examples of how certain key sequences in the film were designed and how they were imagined and ultimately carried through in terms of the final product. So this is again a wonderful short example of the man and his craft. And then the fourth one is called Karel Zaman, The Legend Continues. And this is a sort of a broader perspective on Zaman's work as a whole, from comments from Ludmila Zemanova, the daughter, as well as Karel Huchitska, and talks also about the challenges that Zaman faced in the film industry, the local film industry that he was working in, the types of responses that he received abroad, and the kind of reception that his films received abroad. Very warm, positive receptions, of course. Then the fifth documentary is called Karel Zaman and the World, and this features a number of contemporary filmmakers: Tim Burton, Terry Gilliam, Koji Yamamura, Paul Wells, and Tony Dalton, the people who are filmmakers or film critics or film historians, talking about Zaman and Zaman's influence on them and the film industry writ large. A lot of this footage is, in fact, most of the footage is actually stuff that you can actually see during the first introductory section of the longer documentary film adventure that you also find on the disc Fabulous Baron Munchausen. So this is also to say that the film adventure longer documentary is, in fact, a lot of the information you can find taken from the Karel Zaman Museum or footage made or created through the museum, and so it's all interconnected in that way. So this shorter documentary called Karel Zaman and the World does provide some footage and some discussion from these filmmakers and historians that does appear more or less in some form or another in the longer documentary called Film Adventure, but still it's worth watching, I suggest. And then the Criterion disc has what's called the restoration demonstration, which is like a restoration show reel, and it's talking about how many hours were put into the restoration project and what were the kinds of things that people were doing with their computers and the digital restoration techniques, etc. Again, it's a very short documentary, but well worth a look. Then, to round out the discussion of the Criterion supplements, we have a short sort of trailer for the museum itself, the Karel Zaman Museum, a so-called museum promo. And then we have a trailer for the film, which is for the digital restoration of the film. And that rounds out the Criterion supplements. So that is the Fabulous Baron Munchausen, as released by the Criterion Collection. At this point in time, let me please share with you also some comments about the second run Blu-ray, the earlier second run Blu-ray that had been released prior to the Criterion release. This is a single release from second run from the UK. The Criterion release is Region A, but the second run Blu-ray is Region A, B, C, so it's multi-region. So I have no problems playing this UK Blu-ray on my Japanese Blu-ray player, for example. And that's really wonderful. Also, my understanding is that the 4K digital restoration relied upon by the Criterion Collection for all three films were also the same digital restorations that were relied upon by Second Run when they released the three films through their label, including, of course, Baron Praschil, or the fabulous Baron Munchausen. So there is that. So you're not getting anything different in terms of the presentation of the actual film, the main film itself, of course. And that also holds true for the other films that they released, Invention for Destruction and A Journey to the Beginning of Time, Second Run. Second Run has also an essay by Graham Williamson, which is, of course, different from the Criterion essay by Michael Atkinson. This essay from the Second Run Blu-ray booklet is very, very good. Strongly recommended if you have a chance to read it and catch up with it. As for the supplements that are found on the Second Run Blu-ray, we have there is, of course, the long feature-length documentary Film Adventurer, which is about Karel Zaman, his life and his career, which is the same as that which is found on the fabulous Baron Munchausen disc from Criterion. So that's the same. Next, we have there is the trailer for the restoration of the film, and that's also the same as the trailer that we find in the Criterion Collection release. Okay, and then we have the museum documentaries. Now, for the most part, they are the same, except for one exception, and I'll get to that. But first, we have the documentary on the Second Run disc called Birth of a Film Legend. And again, this is the museum documentary, so it's a very short documentary. Birth of a Film Legend. Now, Birth of a Film Legend, that short documentary from the museum, is not found on the fabulous Baron Munchausen disc from Criterion. Rather, it is found on the Journey to the Beginning of Time disc from Criterion. So it is a kind of carryover. In other words, the Criterion discs are the same in spirit as the three Blu-rays from Second Run taken as a whole. But just to be specific as possible, the Birth of a Film Legend museum documentary that's found on the Second Run disc of Baron Praschil here, it can be found on the Journey to Beginning of Time disc in the Criterion set. Okay. Next is Karel Zaman and the World on the Second Run Blu-ray, which is found again on the fabulous Baron Munchausen Criterion disc. The order is slightly different, but it's still found on the same disc. Next is Why Zaman Made the Film. That is also found on the Criterion's Baron Munchausen disc. The Cast, which is also found on the fabulous Baron Munchausen disc. Special Effects Techniques. Karel Zaman, The Legend Continues. And the Museum Promo. What's different, however, is, as far as I can tell, while Criterion includes on the fabulous Baron Munchausen disc in this set, while Criterion includes a museum documentary on the restoration process, here, for the Second Run Blu-ray of fabulous Baron Munchausen, at least the one that I have, I cannot locate such a short museum documentary. Maybe it's there and I haven't looked hard enough, but I can't find it if it is there. So that seems to me to be one somewhat significant difference. In other words, the Criterion disc includes one short museum documentary that the Second Run Blu-ray seems not to have. Again, it's the restoration process, and you can kind of get a sense of what the restoration processes were for these films by watching the other discs and the restoration documentaries that are included on these other two discs, as an example from Second Run. So in some respects, it's not the end of the world that the Second Run Blu-ray doesn't have that short documentary, at least as far as I am aware. So, but still, that's one noticeable difference, assuming that I'm correct. The other noticeable difference, however, and this is something that is in favor of the Second Run Blu-ray, is that the Second Run Blu-ray has a Second Run Blu-ray exclusive supplement that is not included on the Criterion release. And the supplement in question is a sort of visual essay by Michael Brook. And Michael Brook is a sort of a film historian and expert. He, in fact, wrote the great essay for the booklet from Second Run's Journey to the Beginning of Time. It's really one of the best essays I've come across. Highly recommended. I think this Blu-ray from Second Run is worth it for the essay alone, in fact. Michael Brook's writing is fantastic. And his visual essay for the fabulous Baron Munchausen, Baron Praschil, here, it's about 35 minutes or so, and it is absolutely essential. It is absolutely essential. This is a film that, for instance, I admit I am not the biggest expert in terms of Fabulous Baron Munchausen. I am not the biggest expert in terms of the original underlying literature of Baron Munchausen, and so I don't have that background. Well, someone like me who doesn't have this background, when I watch this Michael Brook visual essay, I am so impressed. It helps me so much with the foundations in terms of the a great basic overview and presentation of the underlying literature, the literary history of Baron Munchausen, and then it also goes into the sort of cinema history of this character, Baron Munchausen, and then it goes into, as well, in both of those discussions, how the character was translated into English as the Baron Munchausen, and then of course we have the Carl Zaman cinematic expression of the character and the story with Baron Praschil, or in English, the fabulous Baron Munchausen. And of course, there is a great discussion of the music, Zdeněk Liška, which is so essential. You know, Liška's relationship with Zaman over the course of these works, in particular, Invention for Destruction and the fabulous Baron Munchausen, although Liška does have a presence in Journey to the Beginning of Time, in terms of the musical scores, his work is undeniably essential to these films and Fabulous Baron Munchausen as an example. And Michael Brook goes into such loving detail about the basic insights into that relationship and the cinematic symbiosis that is so key and makes this film ever so effective on a musical level. And then the Michael Brook essay goes into a very lovely detailed analysis of certain aspects of the film proper, and that rounds out the rest of the essay, but it's still a good chunk of this visual essay, and it's great. You know, he makes comparisons, he makes references and allusions to all things like, of course, he mentions Jules Verne, or he pronounces it Jules Verne, and he talks about other references like Hergé's Tintin, Explorers on the Moon. He speaks about Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick, and allusions to 2001, or not allusions, but discussions about Kubrick and how this film might have influenced Kubrick in some form or another, in terms of Kubrick and his making of his own science fiction masterpiece, etc., etc., and many, many others, my friends. This is just to say that the Michael Brook visual essay, which is, by the way, entitled Baron Munchausen, Facts and Fibs, is, I think, essential viewing, and one that makes the Second Run Blu-ray really tops. It's so wonderful. It's a shame in some respects that the Criterion disc of Fabulous Baron Munchausen doesn't include, for example, any kind of similar analogous Criterion produced supplement on the Fabulous Baron Munchausen disc in the Criterion disc. If you recall, in these three films and the discs, at least the Blu-ray set that I have, for the Journey to the Beginning of Time, there was a Criterion produced supplement, which was an interview with John Stevenson, and then the second disc, Invention for Destruction, included a Criterion produced discussion between James O'Pearl and Phil Tippett. The Fabulous Baron Munchausen disc does not have any Criterion-produced supplement. I suppose that since we have the documentary Film Adventurer, which is, I think, something that was produced through the Carl Zaman Museum, which is also very long. It's about an hour and 40 minutes or so. It's a feature length, and it's packed full of information, essential information. The fact that the Criterion release includes that documentary, I think, is enough to merit this set, and it in a way is a reasonable sort of excuse to not have any further Criterion produced supplement with respect to Baron Prussiau. And in fact, I should say also that the other two Criterion produced supplements do have discussions that carry over into discussions of Baron Prussiau, the fabulous Baron Munchausen. So it's not like the Criterion produced supplements are just talking about Invention for Destruction and Journey to the Beginning of Time, and that's it. There is, of course, some other stuff that's related to Baron Prussiau. I think on the one hand it might seem like it's a shame that Criterion didn't include anything specific for the disc of the fabulous Baron Munchausen, but I think the two supplements that they produced are in many ways, they cover certain ground that is relevant. Also, the feature-length Carol Zaman Film Adventurer documentary is included, etc. So, and then plus you have the museum documentaries, and one of which is, as I indicated, very likely not included in the second run Blu-ray. So, while there might seem to be some negatives to the set, there are some positives as well to the Criterion set, and I do want to bring that to your attention. So, but even with that, my friends, this second run Blu-ray does have the really informative and, as I say, absolutely essential visual essay by Michael Brook, which is just so wonderful. It works so beautifully, hand in hand with the viewing of the feature-length documentary Film Adventurer. So this second run Blu-ray is really great. But also kudos to Criterion and its release of Fabulous Baron Munchausen on this Blu-ray set, which I have here, which is still absolutely stellar. And so that leads me into the final discussion, which is the one that's worth getting. Again, the Criterion set is Region A. It has, as far as I can tell, as of now anyway, all three films in this one set, whereas the second run has the films released separately, so you can get them individually if you want, plus they are all multi-region. So I didn't have any problems with playing any of these on my Japanese Blu-ray player. Plus, there are some omissions on the second run Blu-ray, but there are some additions that are also not found on the Criterion disc. In particular, the Michael Brook visual essay, Facts and Fibs, which I think is so worth it, my friends. And so, but maybe you might think that the Criterion release is enough, and perhaps you might be right by virtue of the fact that it does include the feature-length documentary Film Adventurer. So where does this leave us at the end of this conversation? I suppose I can say that you are okay with having either this or this, whatever you prefer. If you really want to be completist about it, or you want to be more completist about it, because after all, there are even many more other releases of these films out there besides these two that I don't even own, that I don't necessarily have any knowledge about, and that could present other further information that I am not directly aware of. And so it's not to say that this is a full, complete collection, but this is, if you want something that has maybe fuller, maybe complementary supplements to each other, it might be a consideration to get both, my friends. But again, that's up to you and your own considerations and what it is you're seeking in terms of a viewing of Carl Zaman and his works. It might be that just one is enough. And even so, my friends, you are ultimately getting in either release the greatness, I must emphasize that, the greatness that is the film Baron Prussiau, or the fabulous Baron Munchausen. Okay, my friends, so that is it for a discussion of the Carl Zaman set. 3 fantastic journeys by Carl Zaman, which includes spine numbers 1015, 1016, and 1017. That is Journey to the Beginning of Time, Invention for Destruction, and the fabulous Baron Munchausen. My friends, what do you think? Are you interested in this set? Do you already have this set? Have you seen all the films yet? If so, which ones are your favorites? Do you like the films? Do you enjoy the supplements? If so, which supplements are you enjoying? Do you have any other thoughts about this set? Anything at all, my friends. I would so love to hear what it is you have to say. So please feel free to leave your comments down below in the comment section. In the meantime, please, my dear friends, take good care of yourselves. Please be well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies. So until we meet again, my friends, thank you once again for your precious time, and cheers.